News, a Diversified Media Enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. The NFL Players Association says that NFL players are union members and part of the labor movement that has woven the fabric of America for generations. The Players Union says some players have decided to use their platform to peacefully raise awareness to issues that deserve attention. The NFL Players Association says we should not stifle these discussions and cannot allow our rights to become subservient to the very opinions our Constitution protects. Meanwhile, WBAP 820 AM in Fort Worth, Texas, says that Local 100 of United Labor Unions is filing NLRB charges against Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones over the NFL player protests. That union says NFL players have the right of concerted action to protest under the National Labor Relations Act. The complaint says Jones's efforts now to force players not to protest during the national anthem violates the players' rights to concerted action under the NLRA. A planned strike by hundreds of part-time faculty at Tufts University got canceled Wednesday when a tentative new labor agreement was reached. SEIU Local 509 says the 5-year tentative deal improves wages and teaching conditions for the part-time faculty. Part-time faculty at Tufts voted to unionize in 2014. More than half of the part-time faculty will see pay raises of 22.5% over the 5-year agreement. Others will get a minimum of 12.5% pay hikes. Finding themselves constrained by a legal challenge to their efforts to form a union at the University of Minnesota, faculty there are moving away from the traditional NLRB union election model and to a workers' association instead. Anna Kurhajic is a lecturer in American Studies at the University of Minnesota.
We wanted to start doing things that actually could, get us some wins and build some organizing around issues, find opportunities to build solidarity with other workers and students on campus. So we talked about moving away from the traditional unionization model and going towards the workers' association, which for us opens up a lot of possibilities. We're really excited about it.
Kurhajic says the legal challenge would have divided faculty along class lines between tenure and non-tenure contingent faculty. That class difference was unacceptable to pro-union faculty.
Across the board at all of our meetings, tenure-track faculty refuse to be classed differently than our colleagues who have contingent appointments. A really important step of solidarity for us.
University of Minnesota faculty are hoping that their workers' association enables solidarity and more powerful organizing with many other workers beyond the faculty. WIN is America's multimedia news voice for workers.
We need to make more money. What they're paying us, the greedy corporation, they just want to pay us what they want to pay us. And it's not right.
Support WIN's worker news mission at workersindependentnews.com. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit workersindependentnews.com.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead. Make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a weekend it was indeed. Yes, more golfing. More golfing. And just what we need, more golfing. Did I mention there was more golfing? Because, we got a couple of things going on in the country. And we had more golfing. You got all this stuff going on in Puerto Rico. Still no power, no electricity, none of that stuff for the folks there. And still there was, did I mention there was golfing? You got California, the worst disaster in the state's history, and there was more golfing. You've got millions of people across the country now in upheaval because, hey, we're going to just take your health care away. But there was golfing. Am I making too much of the golf thing? Because, I seem to remember a president who went golfing a lot during his presidency. Wait a minute. I seem to remember a lot of presidents going golfing a lot during their presidency, but none more than this guy who pointed his fingers at all of them and said, "You golf too much." I'm going to work all the time. I am going to work, and it's going to be all the time. Never going to leave the White House, which I'm calling a dump. Have I missed anything? All the while, Rome is burning, folks, and we have golfing. And not bad enough, Rand Paul, again, a guy who was pointing the finger at Obama, out there golfing. Yes, Virginia, there is golfing. And the thing is, look, there's part of me that goes, maybe Trump was foreseeing the future. Maybe he was clairvoyant, or maybe he's just going to be, he knows he's a disaster. That picture he took with all the generals was really the calm before the storm. Because we are right now storming. And this continued assault on the Obama legacy, well, it is full steam ahead. You look this week. This past week, you saw on Thursday the executive order that's going to destroy health care, the Iran pullout, which I guess is coming, not to mention, you think about since this guy took office, this war on the Obama legacy, pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, pulled out of the TPP, and I got to be honest, I was okay with the TPP going, ended DACA, rolled back LGBT rights, went after let's go to build pipelines and repealed the Clean Power. We're going to make coal and oil and gas great again while simultaneously killing solar. Which, interestingly enough, employs many more people than does the coal industry. But hey, that's a great talking point. Making coal great. And, there's part of me that goes, if you could say anything positive about this administration, is that they don't govern, they don't dictate, they don't rule by the polls. That's not their thing. Because if they did, they would realize that, with the healthcare thing, we want it fixed. Don't care about I don't care about your campaign pledges. I don't care about your bumper sticker sloganeering. I don't care about that. I care about healthcare. I care about people who get sick being seen by a doctor. I care about parents who have children who have cancer getting the treatments that they need without losing their homes. I care about that stuff. Your political machinations, not so concerned with. And look, we are such a divided country, which is really, really hard to say, that in the United States of America, we are this divided. But when you have 71% of the people who were polled in this last Kaiser Family Foundation health tracking poll, when 71% of us say that, Congress needs to do what they can to make the ACA work. They need to do what they can to fix the problems where they are, improve the insurance that's there, move us forward. Backward is not an option, yet this administration is all backward. 21%, however, and again, you've always got a segment, the solid Trump base who know nothing more than repeal and replace, or lock her up, or death tax. And you go, can you go a little deeper than that? No. 21% say do whatever it takes to make Obamacare fail. And you go, really, who are these 21%? who are going to say, you know what, do whatever you can do to take health insurance away from millions of people. That we know, we absolutely know this, that when you take this away, when you rip this lifeline from people, some people are going to die. And yeah, but Rick, everybody dies. It's true. It's true. Everyone does eventually. They do succumb. Age will take us all. It's true. It's absolutely true. The difference is it seems that the higher your socioeconomic status, the more you can afford care, the more you can afford, doctor's visits and, all that stuff. And the longer your lifespan. That's kind of, as someone who's on that track, I would like to have a longer lifespan and thus being able to see a doctor when I'm sick or when I have a bizarre, weird thing happen that could have killed me. So I'm told. If left long enough, I go to the doctor, it's fixed, and you know what? Then I get to go back again, and they say, no, everything's fine. Come back in a year. If Trump gets his way, millions of people are going to lose their coverage. And look, the whole thing is Trump's going to pull the subsidies from the insurance companies because they're greedy. And look, do I love the fact that we're subsidizing insurance companies? No. I think we should have, and again, back to the fix, I think we should have one giant insurance pool. One giant insurance pool. Everybody in. That's simple. It's really that simple. Because and you got to love this, what his executive order is to allow small businesses to pool into associations and make large insurance buying pools. And you go, okay, let's make a large insurance buying pool. One. Big giant one. Don't give tax subsidies to corporations who provide health insurance. Pull that back. You really want to do something other than destroy the Obama legacy? Let's talk. Let's figure out where those problems are. Because look, there are some legitimate problems. There are some areas in this country where there are no insurers. They've looked at that market and they've said, you know what? There's no way to make money here. That's what they said. No way to make money. And that's a problem because, understand, insurance, in my view, is not about making money. It's about making sure people get care. Making sure people, when they go to the doctor, they get seen. When they get seen, what's the point in going to the doctor to get well if on the way out they hand you a bill that gives you a heart attack? It seems kind of self-defeating. And I look at this whole nonsensical debate, and I had a couple of people say, "Well, you don't know other people's problems. You can't admit their problems." No, I can fully admit there are problems with the Affordable Care Act. I've said it from the beginning. One of my problems is there's no public option, so which means that in some areas you're going to have no options, and in some you only have one, which is a monopoly, and they can charge whatever the hell they want, offer virtually nothing, as long as it's above the essential benefits, which again the Trump executive order guts. So you're going to be able to buy really cheap insurance. It's going to be dirt cheap. But if you ever get sick, shame on you, because it's not going to cover anything. It might as well be just a discount card. Walmart or CVS or somebody's going to give you a discount card. You get 10% off your procedures. Enroll now so we can sell your information to other companies, and you'll get a discount. I mean, think about it. Think about what this administration is doing. And just how crazy it has been. I mean, it's angering, it's frustrating, it's all those things. And at some point, you and I are going to be the ones who suffer from all of the insanity. Because right now, I think Trump's right. Trump is right. This is the calm before all of the storm. I mean, think about it. It's only been 9 months. And the world is heading towards chaos. I mean, look what's going on in North Korea. Look what's going on in Iran. Look what's going on with domestically with healthcare, and we're now just going. It's at some point going to come to a head. And the question is, how do we do it? How do we deal with it? And how do we stand up and fight back? Part of what we want to get to. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Propane Jane's going to be here to help us work our way through, well, what's coming. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. The United States met in New York City. People interested in the problems facing working people, including long hours, low pay, and unsafe working conditions, gathered together. The labor movement was just beginning in this country. These were the years when the early trade unions were formed. Women played an important role in the early labor movement. Female textile mill workers in Lawrence, Massachusetts began to organize for the 10-hour day. In 1844, they established the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association. Their goal was to improve working conditions in the mills. The Lowell Women's Group sent a representative to New York for the Labor Congress. Another important development of the fledgling labor movement was the establishment of labor presses. George Henry Evans, a labor newsman, also attended the Congress. He was the editor of a series of U.S. labor papers, starting with the Workman's Advocate in 1829. He had come to the United States from England, where he had been involved in the trade labor movement. He also attended the Labor Congress. The meeting recommended the formation of 3 organizations. First was an industrial brotherhood for workers, including farmers. The second was an industrial sisterhood for women workers. The third was a group for friends of labor. The Congress met again in New York in 1847, then again met in Chicago in 1850. These early efforts to establish larger labor groups did not gain much traction, but they began to lay the framework for workers to come together to discuss their challenges and imagine how they could work together to bring about change for better wages, shorter hours, and safer working conditions. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Our quote of the day from Michelle Obama, who said, "The presidency doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are." And look, I look at this guy, I look at the Orange Menace, the Marmalade Mussolini, whatever you want to call him, and it really, magnifies exactly who this guy is. And look, over the weekend we saw some of the worst things out of this administration, and more golfing. Who doesn't want more golfing? Scary, sad, and dangerous all at once. And here to help us work through some of our problems, our good friend Propane Jane. Jane, thanks for taking time for us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me back.
There was golfing. Lots of golfing.
At least he's consistent. I don't know what else to say. I think it's sort of, the hypocrisy is just astounding, right? Because I seem to remember when President Obama even thought about golfing, it was like this huge scandal, and how much money, the taxpayers were spending on shuffling him back and forth, and just how incensed people were that he had the audacity to golf.
Yep. And this was going to be the guy who was going to work all the time. He was going to be tremendous. He was going to be great. He was just going to work. And yet you've got California that's literally burning. You've got Puerto Rico, who no one has electricity. You've got 4 dead soldiers. You've got all of this stuff. And golfing. I guess golfing is what we do, right?
That's his job description. It's like we were talking about last week. In his mind, his job is to manufacture these, stunts that are pleasing to his supporters. And it's not to solve problems. They didn't elect him to solve problems. They elected him to cause problems and to be the roller coaster and Mr. Unpredictable, and flying by the seat of his pants. And this is what we have, unfortunately.
And, at every turn, I keep coming back to that. And maybe, I'm sure you remember this as well, when they had the big shindig with all the military brass standing around and all the people, all the photo ops, and him going, this could be the calm before the storm. I keep going back to that moment going, the storm is coming.
And you can't even waste time trying to figure out what the storm is or was, because ultimately this is the narcissist who cried wolf again. This is the boy who cried wolf. This is him trying to create this like aura of suspense and mystery, and you just never know what he's going to do next, because he wants people to feel that way. I don't think that it registers that, a president isn't supposed to kind of leave you hanging in suspense. It's like your oncologist is not supposed to leave you, wondering whether or not you have cancer. And so unlike most presidents that we've ever had, when there are crises happening, he actually ratchets up the crisis. I mean, and it's very much, I think, from an entertainment standpoint, where he's coming from, because he's trying to draw attention to himself, and it's almost like just to boost ratings, just to see what's going to happen next, and not necessarily, thinking about his role as a president is supposed to be to, put forth calm and assuredness, and people shouldn't be afraid of what's going to happen next. But I think he actually likes that.
Well, I mean, it is all about the ratings, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, it's all about him. Now, what did you think of this weekend? I mean, this weekend, outside of golf, because, yes, there was golfing.
Yes.
Because there was a smiling picture with Rand Paul, and they do make such a cute couple.
Oh, gosh.
But he was at the Values Voters Summit, and Trump, first sitting president ever to address this this crowd.
Right. Yeah.
Where he said, we don't worship government. We don't do that, Jane. We worship God.
Does he though?
And my first thought, I'm going, really? Did I miss something?
It's very hypocritical, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, how much did they talk about, the gun violence epidemic? How much did they talk about pro-life from a standpoint of protecting people from gun violence? The hypocrisy of standing there and saying you value Christian, the Christian teachings, when you're literally like just throwing the sick and the poor to the wolves. You just signed an executive order to take health care away from millions of people. So it's very antithetical. And I think it just further exposes the hypocrisy of that entire crowd.
Right, but he says, quote, "We are stopping cold the attacks on Judeo-Christian values. Stopping it cold. Done. No more."
How are they doing that though?
Because we're going to go after those gays. In fact, if you read the New Yorker article, I guess Trump even jokes that Pence wants to hang all gay people.
It's amazing how much they sound like Putin and Russia and the Taliban. I mean, right? I mean, there's all this fundamentalism, and actually, like, it's right-wing extremism, and the same kind of fear that they had about theocracy and Sharia law and all of this. It's amazing how they don't see their own similarities with those movements.
No, I mean, it's just plain nuts. But I look at this and my fear is, and this is, and we've been talking about this for a while. My fear is that, finally there's a point at which we all just kind of break and go, you know what? I'm just turning away, and moving on.
Yeah, I think that the fatigue is definitely real. I had some friends were sending around like kind of a group text, and these are mostly psychiatrists, of course. So somebody said, I can't. I have outrage fatigue. I can't every day. I'm outraged by something new, and this thing that you've sent me, I can't muster the appropriate level of outrage because I'm already like maxed out for this week.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that in a joking manner, the sitting president of the United States, the most powerful man in the country, is turning to his number two that he chose and said that if he had his way, he would be hanging people.
It's disgusting.
And we're not. I don't know. I read that and I'm just going. It's got to be Andy Borowitz. This can't be true. This has got to be satire.
It's for real. And what I think is also, really disheartening is that, if you were to go to like any, like Stormfront or like the comment section at Drudge and InfoWars, and this is the kind of thing that they are saying, very regularly and openly. And so again, like we talked about last week, when he says these things, it really is going across very well for his supporters, for that 35% that really do believe this and really do feel this way. During the campaign, they surveyed, like back during the primary actually, and they surveyed Trump voters in South Carolina, and most of them, I mean, it was like 80% were for banning all Muslims and felt like the South should have won the Civil War. And these things that we sort of think are like very harebrained and like, oh, I can't believe people actually think this. There's a lot of people that actually think that. And so it doesn't feel hypocritical for them to see a man who is an admitted sexual predator, acting like he's preserving Judeo-Christian values. He was just served a subpoena from a woman who alleges that she was, sexually molested by him in some way. So, I just feel that from the outside looking in, all of us who aren't his most fervent supporters see it as very, atrocious actually. But they don't see that. They don't have that same mirror being held up to their own face.
Now, how do you do that? Look, I find I railed against Trump. What Weinstein did is just as deplorable. How is it that from the right wing we heard nothing about Trump whatsoever? There was never a statement on this is the whole grabber by the pee thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not a peep. Church mice. And now Weinstein's the devil incarnate, and now the Republicans are the great defenders of women's rights.
Right. It doesn't make sense. I mean, he doesn't even stand up on its face. And I think this goes back to that idea of Trump really being a savior for these people. And he is seen as infallible. They've already put him in a category where anything he does is okay just by virtue of the fact that he's on their team and on their side. And so a behavior that they can, easily look at another person and say, okay, that's wrong, he shouldn't have done that. They can't do that for Trump because they are basically conditioned at this point to weasel out of it in some way and to say, oh, that's just fake news, or, oh, that's just, you just don't like him, or, people just like to lie about him because, he's powerful, or whatever excuse they come up with.
Yeah, my favorite is, he gave up the perfect life to come and save us. I love that frame, that, he was living the dream. He was living the dream, and now he's given up all of that just to save us, which is just, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, minus Russia, right? I mean, minus any role that Russia may have played in this process in terms of helping him along to get where he is to do the things that he's doing. I mean, you have to sort of just ignore that whole piece of it. But in addition to that, I think that also misses one very important piece of this, which is that Trump is miserable. I mean, yes, he sort of, is always going to engage in this self-aggrandizement. But this entire time, there's nothing but leaks coming out that are just continuing to say that he hates everybody that's there. He hates the fact that he can't just come and go as he pleases and that people are scrutinizing him. He is so obsessed with seeing how he's being discussed in the media that this is actually a very unpleasant situation for him, and that's also why he's acting out in the way that he's acting out. He's not having a good time.
There's part of me that goes, I look at him and I go, I don't actually know. I mean, He looks like in his big rallies when he's in his environment, man, he looks like he's thrilled throwing the bombs. But given that frame that you just laid out, because you're right, there is a lot of things he can't control, and his frustration on the Twitter is always very apparent. There was a story today on over at CNN that said that the House leadership is concerned all to be because they're thinking they're going to lose the House. And at least that's what Paul Ryan told all of the big money donors in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Is that we're going to lose the whole deal, and that's going to mean impeachment for Trump. And my thoughts were, if let's say the Democrats did take the House, and you did see this kind of a push to hold him more accountable, how much crazier could he be? How much more dangerous would it make a narcissist to have that kind of a scenario?
Well, I think first and foremost, Trump is going to try to make deals with whoever he can make deals with. And so, when we say dangerous, I think it means the word dangerous, in terms of Trump means different things to different people.
I mean, touching a button that blows up North Korea and starts the next war.
Exactly. Like that's like the existential threat, right? I mean, that's the biggest danger, I think.
I mean, coming out and saying that we're going to restart the Crusades by going into Iran.
Exactly. But the Republican Party, put him there because they are under this, mythology and fantasy that they can control his behavior. So take all of that kind of off of the table, because in their minds, they somehow still think they can stop him from doing something that dangerous. Dangerous for the GOP means that Trump is so narcissistically driven that if he's not happy with the Republicans and the fact that he has no loyalty to them, he easily will walk over to the Democrats and say, I just want to do something with y'all, number one, to spite the GOP, and then also to give himself whatever victories he can actually get in the media. And the media loves this story, right, that Trump goes behind the scenes and he's wheeling and dealing with Nancy and Chuck. And they like that story because it feels like, whoa, he's unpredictable, and he really is this, like, maverick-type person who just does whatever. But for the Republican Party, this is very dangerous because he is constantly turning his weapons against, theoretically, what's supposed to be his own party. And they are also very willing to primary people. I mean, even Steve Bannon is there. And I think he said something like within the last couple of weeks that the only person he's willing to not go up against is Ted Cruz. And, like, everybody else is just kind of fair game.
And what is the love affair with Ted Cruz?
I don't, hey.
That's your
from
state.
My home
What's
state,
your state?
So I literally cannot tell you. I mean, I think it really is just that he's, proudly ignorant, and they like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no other explanation.
I don't know why Ted Cruz is the golden child on the white supremacist right. I just don't know.
It doesn't make any sense. I know. But
and the other thing that gets me is, and this is way off topic, but this Milo Yiannopoulos, I can't even say his name. But how is Milo the golden child with the white supremacists? How have they not lynched him?
Because as long as you toe the party line, you become one of them.
Yeah, but
this is how Ben Carson is there, and this is how David, the Sheriff Clark in Wisconsin. As long as you are, self-loathing to a certain extent, that you are basically singing the same white supremacist tune, then it's okay and you belong. And so I think that is definitely something that is playing out, in particular in these races that are going to be coming up, like, what is that, in Alabama? They have a race coming up.
Yeah, Moore and Jones.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
you've got the craziest theocrat possible, someone who is duped people into giving him money so he can enrich himself, and and then running against a guy in Doug Jones who was a good, decent, fighting guy. Went after and prosecuted. I think it was the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing years after the fact.
Right.
I mean, someone who was really conscientious and thoughtful. And sadly, I think he's going to lose. But to a guy who's just insane.
Yeah, and that's the parallel, right? Is that there can be and there's like an allowable amount of insanity that the Republican Party is willing to tolerate, and for them it isn't as dangerous as it looks to us, because that's actually what their voters are wanting. And I think Trump is kind of an affirmation for them that they want to still go down this same path of insanity and hatred and ignorance, because they see that won him votes. And while there are people sort of, more in the establishment of the party and more people that are in these purple districts around the country that are wanting to go, okay, no, this is not okay, this is like an adult daycare center, or whatever they can say to register some level of disapproval of what they see, they are being, kind of put to the side. Their concerns are being put to the side, so that Trump can continue to rally his base, and continue to do these very erratic and very dangerous things. And I just think that, for whatever reason, for their own personal reasons and their own personal gain, they're just allowing it to continue, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary stuff, and again, it comes back to these people are soulless. I mean, and that's all I keep coming back to, because the things, I look at this healthcare thing, which I've been talking about, deciding that we're going to rip the subsidies out, because everyone hates insurance companies, and I'm with you. I hate the insurance companies too. But by doing this, that millions of people are going to lose their insurance, and people will die earlier than they should have because they don't have health care. That's the reality. And you've got these Republicans, and you've got Donald Trump, and you've got these folks who are going, we don't care. Screw them.
Yeah, and this is what we were talking about last week, when we were talking about this idea of, the 35%, and how so many of these people, are actually going to be detrimentally impacted by this agenda. I just saw something the other day that said 70% of the people who are going to be affected by this new change in the subsidies are people that are in Trump counties. And so this is a very clear example of how, they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. And it's not really a situation where you can say, oh, well, they didn't know this was going to happen. He and the Republican Party have been saying this nonstop for the last 7 years. That they're going to repeal Obamacare and that they're going to take all of these subsidies away. They've already said all of that. And so these people, like you said, they just decided, I don't really care about that, because it's more important to me that this is a guy who's going to build the wall, and this is a guy who's going to stop letting Muslims into America, and this is a guy who isn't going to, let the gays and lesbians and transgender, just be free in this society. And those things were more tangible to them than like the bread and butter, kitchen table things that are actually going to keep them afloat.
Yeah. What's the matter with Kansas? No, you're right. But here's the last question I've got for you. Is there ever a moment where there's an epiphany? Because, as you pointed out, because of this executive order, more red states are going to be harmed. More voters in red states are going to be harmed than ones in Democratic states. Mm-hmm. Is there a moment? Is there that epiphany where you go, all of the horrible things that are going to happen are going to be to the people who are angriest against the establishment, and when they realize that their savior, or are they incapable of realizing that this is not their savior?
I think they're incapable of realizing it. Okay. I think that they have. These are the same people who think Reagan, hung the moon. And we've had decades now of really concrete evidence to show the detriment that was done, due to his policies across the board.
Can't argue with that.
Right, yeah. But again, this is that political ideology that resonates with people's hearts, and not necessarily their minds. They're sort of thinking with their emotions as opposed to looking at the facts on a piece of paper. And because they're going to basically just throw the facts out and say that they're fake news.
Because I believe
to do that. Exactly.
Believe.
Yeah. I mean, they are conditioned to do that because it feels comfortable and it feels better to have some thoughts and some ideas coming from, a politician or, somebody who's running to be the president of the United States, that feel like the same thing that you think on the inside, even if it is wrong, based on the facts. They don't necessarily care about that. So I think that we are past the point of them actually coming to some come to Jesus epiphany moment. There are enough hypocritical things that have happened to this point that they should have already had that epiphany already. So our main goal really is to mobilize and organize people who aren't falling for the BS and who have sense enough to know this is bad, I see who's doing it, and I'm not going to vote them back into office. And I'm going to, put somebody else there that is making more sense and that is at least, dealing with the reality that's in front of us.
Or at least that's the hope. As always, Jane,
Yeah.
I appreciate the time. Good stuff. I can't wait to talk to you again.
All right, you two have a great week.
You as well, our good friend Propane Jane. Here's the thing. It's going to take us. It's going to take us to wake up, and it's going to take us to fight back. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Uncovering the con in conservatism. Rick Smith.
Betsy DeVos and her hubby Dick are lucky enough to have inherited a big chunk of the multi-billion-dollar fortune that Daddy DeVos amassed through his shady Amway Corporation. But what they've done with their Amway money is certainly not the American way. The DeVos couple are part of the Koch brothers coterie, pushing plutocratic policies that reject our country's one-for-all, all-for-one egalitarianism. In particular, Ms. DeVos has spent years and millions of dollars spreading the right wing's ideological nonsense that our tax dollars should even be given to private schools that exclude people of color and the poor, as well as to profiteering schools known to cheat students and taxpayers. Bizarrely, Donald Trump chose this vehement opponent of public education to head up the agency in charge of, guess what? Public education. Rather than working to help improve our public schools, the Trump-DeVos duo wants to take $20 billion from their federal funding and give it to corporate chains. To see the efficiency of this scheme, look to Arizona, where State Senate President Steve Yarborough pushed privatization into law. One of Arizona's corporatized schools, called Axto, pays its executive director $125,000 a year. His name is Steve Yarborough. Axto also pays millions of dollars to another for-profit corporation named HY Processing to handle administrative chores. The Y in HY stands for Yarborough. And Axto also pays $52,000 a year in rent to its landlord. Yes, Steve Yarborough. This is Jim Hightower saying, as Wall Street banksters, drug company gougers, airline fee fixers, and so many others have taught us over and over, most corporate executives are paid big bucks to take every shortcut, cheat, and do whatever to squeeze out another dime in profits. Why would we entrust our school children to them?
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
From UN headquarters in New York, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, for Talk Media News. Catalonia will not declare independence from Spain, the province's president said Tuesday. That announcement follows a controversial referendum last week in which 90% of Catalonians voted for independence, but turnout was low. Since then, Spanish officials have tightened the noose, threatening to cancel Catalonia's current semi-autonomy and trying to lure businesses out of the region. In a speech to the Catalonian parliament on Tuesday, President Puigdemont said the risks of pursuing independence were starting to stack up.
We've heard that some companies have decided to transfer their company base outside of Catalonia. People are afraid that this may have an impact on our economic situation. Yes.
Though he drew rapturous applause by saying Catalonia should be an independent state, Puigdemont said the independence push was being formally put on hold in favor of negotiations. But the prospect of talks doesn't look good either. Spanish officials say further concessions are off the table, and top EU leaders appear unmoved by Catalonia's pleas for help. And just days after the inauguration, Donald Trump was invited to the United Kingdom for a state visit. The plan was for Trump to visit this year, but with each passing month, the trip becomes more political and less likely to occur in the near future. First, 1.8 million Brits signed a parliamentary petition asking the government to call off the visit. Then, the Speaker of the House of Commons said Trump was forbidden from addressing the Parliament. Now, the Evening Standard newspaper reports the state visit has been scrapped in favor of a much less flashy working visit sometime next year. One highlight also nixed from the plans, an invitation from Queen Elizabeth to visit Buckingham Palace. For more global news headlines, visit TalkMediaNews.com.
The most important issues of the day. This is The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Interesting story over at The New Yorker. And again, it's got to be one of these. You know, when I first read it, it's like, you know, this has got to be satire. There's no way that Donald Trump would be treating Mike Pence like this. Evidently, according to The New Yorker, Trump has really just kind of beat up on Pence. In fact, you know, when someone would leave a room, he would ask them if Pence made them pray. He also evidently said, you know, don't whenever the topic of LGBT issues come up, he'd point to Pence and go, don't ask that guy. He wants to hang them all. But again, this is who he's chosen to be his number two. And he treats him just like number two. And I guess good. Yeah, I guess he needs that. Anyway, let's find out what's going on around the world in Washington, D.C. Victoria Jones, Talk Media News. Victoria, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, my God. I've just seen a story.
Yes. Is it true?
No, a different one.
Okay, because, you know, at first I thought, you know, it's the New Yorker. It could be the Borowitz Report. It could be satire.
The New Yorker's been excelling itself recently. No, this is a new one that popped this morning on the Washington Post. Came out after my newsletter went out. Inside the adult daycare center, how aides tried to control and coerce Trump. The Post spoke to 18 aides, confidants, and outside advisors, most of whom insisted on anonymity to speak candidly. No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, who wants to be the? So at the end of this, will we see a movie like the Madness of King Donald?
Oh, I think so. Some aides spend a significant part of their time devising ways to rein in and control the impetuous president, angling to avoid outbursts that might work against him, according to these interviews. If you visit the White House today, you see aides running around with red faces, shuffling paper, and trying to keep up with this president, said one Republican in frequent contact with the administration. That's what the scene is.
Yeah, how about ice cream in blocks?
He gets 2 scoops.
2 scoops. I mean, look, anyone who's had a 2-year-old, you kind of learn how to do this.
2-scoop Trump.
Lots of distraction, blocks, and don't give him scissors, but something to tear paper up with, something.
But they do. I mean, they give him this special news. They give him these.
His special news. They
give him at a certain time of the day. This was a story that came out about a month ago, 2 months ago. I think it was. I can't remember if it was the Post or the Times or the Wall. Anyway, it was a reputable. It might have been the AP. They give him. I think it's at 9:30 and 4:30. It may actually have to be twice a day. They give him stories, positive news stories, to bolster his mood. H.R. McMaster, the president's national security advisor, has frequently resorted to diversionary tactics to manage Trump. In the Oval Office, he will often volunteer to have his staff study Trump's more unorthodox ideas. He plays rope-a-dope with him, a senior administration official said. He thinks Trump is going to forget, but he doesn't. HR's strategy is to say, let us study that. Let us study that, boss. He tries to deflect.
Nice. And again, you can't make this up, and it's just sad. Again, every day I keep going back to, look, I wasn't I liked Obama. I'm not going to put him in the greatest ever category as some do, but I got to be honest, I miss him.
What a smile, man.
I miss him.
What a smile. Where's the lady who answered the phone? Can we get her comment, please, about the smile?
She can't. She's laughing.
Yeah, because she's agreeing with my smile so much she's passed out. There's a smile.
There is that.
Yes.
So is it possible Bannon's right that Trump doesn't make it to the midterms and maybe this insanity ends, or it gets worse where we got the guy who wants to hang gay people?
Isn't this fascinating? Because he said that, according to that story that you're talking about, that there's only a 30% Trump is going to make it through his presidency. And then at the Values Voter Summit on Saturday in Washington, D.C., which is for religious conservatives, he said that Trump is going to win the Electoral College in 2020 with 400 votes.
So which is it? I mean, are we bipolar?
That was a long pause.
If he doesn't get impeached, he's going to win by a landslide.
Well, is he going to be? Would he be impeached? Would he leave? Would he choose to go? Would it be the 25th Amendment? In fact, Bannon said to him that his biggest threat is not impeachment, but it's the 25th Amendment, to which Trump said, according to Bannon in this story, what's that?
Yeah, that's the guy I want to be president. The guy who goes, what's that? Oh, help us. Help us. So what else is going on in the Bannon world? Since I guess he's taken on the entire GOP establishment, right?
It's war.
All-out war.
It's war.
Except against Ted Cruz.
Yes, he gave I don't know what you call it, a barnstormer or a barn burner or a stem, not a stem winder. No, it was a barn burner of a speech at the Values Voter Summit, and said that we're at war with the Republican establishment, and he went off on Mitch McConnell, who he's been off for a while. Of course, so's the president, which should make for an interesting lunch, as Trump is lunching with Mitch McConnell today. And basically, Bannon wants McConnell gone. I think he wants other leaders gone, but he wants McConnell gone. And he said that effectively that that he is organized, and he has a group of there's a group behind this. He's not doing it on his own. Primarying every Republican senator who is up for re-election, except Senator Ted Cruz. And two of the things that they all have to agree on is, one, get rid of Mitch McConnell, two, get rid of the filibuster. Yeah.
Fun. So what are they dining on? The heart of humanity and the tears of broken dreams?
At lunch?
Yes.
It's Monday, so... yeah, probably. I don't know what they have on Monday. I mean, it's Monday, so you never have fish on a Monday, do you?
Yeah, potluck over the leftovers from the weekend, I guess, then, right? From the golf trip, because there was golfing this weekend.
With Senator Rand Paul.
Yes.
He was at his golf club 2 days.
Didn't they make such a cute couple in the picture that they sent out?
Did they?
I don't know. I wake up and I just look at this stuff and I go, my ability to be shocked, my ability to be...
Oh, here's one.
Hit me.
Your President Trump's going on a big Asia trip.
Good, bye.
Between November, I think it's starting November the 3rd. I mean, it's going to be a long trip. He doesn't like these long trips, but he's going between the 3rd and the 14th to all over Asia. It's a huge trip. Guess who he's going to meet with?
I haven't the slightest. Who's he going to meet with?
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte.
Oh, you got to be kidding.
Extrajudicial killings. Yes.
Wow. I mean, that's a huge... that sends a huge message.
Yes.
Oh, maybe the joke about Pence wanting to hang gay people isn't actually a joke. Since Duarte's a guy who actually does.
Well, no, he
just shoots them.
Allegedly has drug dealers and drug users shot.
No, I knew that, but didn't he go after gay people too?
I don't know whether he may have done at some point, but the focus now is on drug dealers.
Yeah. Well,
so it's a long trip. Remember how there were a lot of reports that he got very tired on that big Middle East trip, that first trip.
Yeah.
And that he didn't want any more long trips. Well, he's got one.
So we can send him. So that first couple of weeks in November could be good weeks at home. Could be a little lull before Thanksgiving.
No.
No. All right. I
don't know
just thought
what's
I would
going
ask.
to happen. I mean, so many things can happen. I would bet you that there will be some kind of Russian news around that time.
Okay, like the one this weekend where the Russian trolls had to watch House of Cards?
I love that story.
I do too, because I watched House of Cards and I'm going, really? Is this? Wow, they got. Could I be a troll?
Ask the lady who answers the phone.
Okay, there you go. Now also a new coalition out, the Dream Coalition. Got some politicos going to try and save the Dream Act.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is an Axios story out this morning, which I've lost. Let me just bring this up again because it is actually a significant story, and I've now genuinely lost it. But it's called the Dream Coalition. It is supported by numerous big name Democrats who are supporting it. And yes, the aim is to really get something done to help the Dreamers. And I could actually give you.
Are there any real big name Democrats?
Well, there are. And if I actually could find my story, I could. Oh, here it is. I could give you an intelligent report and not look lame. Here we go. Hold on.
I'm holding. Not long or I'm going to fall.
Don't go.
All right. Here we go. Get into it.
Don't go. Don't.
Try not to.
Okay. Leon Panetta.
All right.
New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, Madeleine Albright, Univision CEO Randy Falco.
Yeah,
Harvard President Drew Faust.
Sorry, I'm not excited. Anytime you put Panetta and Emanuel into a no, I don't know. I'm hoping they succeed. I'm hoping, but no, not going. No, that's it. Okay, so lastly, Obamacare done. Have we finally? We going to kill that off now?
I don't think there's an actual stake in it. I think the president tried on Friday, and fascinating letter over the weekend by a large number of groups, including the American Medical Association, many other medical groups, also the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, also Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, the big lobbyists for the health insurance companies, all getting together saying, please, Congress, to leaders of Congress, please, Congress, do something about the stopping of these subsidies to the insurance companies, because they're imploring them to act on it, because it's going to be very bad for patients and terribly bad for the insurance, insurance, for premiums.
Yeah, but at least Trump will be able to say, I did something. It was bad, but I still did it.
Well, there's that.
There you go. Victoria, appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Always great to talk to you, Victoria Jones. Talk Media News. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. The NFL Players Association says that NFL players are union members and part of the labor movement that has woven the fabric of America for generations. The Players Union says some players have decided to use their platform to peacefully raise awareness to issues that deserve attention. The NFL Players Association says we should not stifle these discussions and cannot allow our rights to become subservient to the very opinions our Constitution protects. Meanwhile, WBAP 820 AM in Fort Worth, Texas, says that Local 100 of United Labor Unions is filing NLRB charges against Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones over the NFL player protests. That union says NFL players have the right of concerted action to protest under the National Labor Relations Act. The complaint says Jones's efforts now to force players not to protest during the national anthem violates the players' rights to concerted action under the NLRA. A planned strike by hundreds of part-time faculty at Tufts University got canceled Wednesday when a tentative new labor agreement was reached. SEIU Local 509 says the 5-year tentative deal improves wages and teaching conditions for the part-time faculty. Part-time faculty at Tufts voted to unionize in 2014. More than half of the part-time faculty will see pay raises of 22.5% over the 5-year agreement. Others will get a minimum of 12.5% pay hikes. Finding themselves constrained by a legal challenge to their efforts to form a union at the University of Minnesota, faculty there are moving away from the traditional NLRB union election model and to a workers' association instead. Anna Kurhajic is a lecturer in American Studies at the University of Minnesota.
We wanted to start doing things that actually could, get us some wins and build some organizing around issues, find opportunities to build solidarity with other workers and students on campus. So we talked about moving away from the traditional unionization model and going towards the workers' association, which for us opens up a lot of possibilities. We're really excited about it.
Kurhajic says the legal challenge would have divided faculty along class lines between tenure and non-tenure contingent faculty. That class difference was unacceptable to pro-union faculty.
Across the board at all of our meetings, tenure-track faculty refuse to be classed differently than our colleagues who have contingent appointments. A really important step of solidarity for us.
University of Minnesota faculty are hoping that their workers' association enables solidarity and more powerful organizing with many other workers beyond the faculty. WIN is America's multimedia news voice for workers.
We need to make more money. What they're paying us, the greedy corporation, they just want to pay us what they want to pay us. And it's not right.
Support WIN's worker news mission at workersindependentnews.com. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit workersindependentnews.com.
Rebuilding America. The Rick Smith Show.
Back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So on Thursday, the president signed the executive order. Another one of those jabs to the heart of the Affordable Care Act or the dreaded Obamacare. Basically going to rip the subsidies away and also set up a situation where people can pool into associations and offer cheap, crappy plans. Interesting to me. I'm a big pool guy. I'm of the mindset, we should have one really large insurance pool. Since basic insurance, risk management, all of that is more people in, less risk, cheaper costs for everybody. Seems kind of sane, seems kind of rational. This is not what the executive order was. But there are some thoughts out there on, things that can be done. And look, I'm not totally opposed to new ideas, but what we saw Thursday in the executive order, I don't think is a good thing. Anyway, here to talk a little bit about healthcare and her most recent article, Healthcare Woes, a quick guide to PEOs. I've asked Helene Olin to come and talk with us. She's also the author of Pound Foolish. Helene, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you for having me on. And I completely agree with you about the greatest risk pool of them all would be single payer.
Yeah, I mean, it's mind-blowing to me that, we just don't seem to get there. I mean, everyone keeps talking about what we need are large insurance pools. Even Rand Paul is saying we need a large insurance pool. Why not have a large insurance pool? Seems sane, seems rational.
You would think this would be the moment to push for at least a Medicare expansion, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but again, that would give the Obama legacy a boost if we were to keep any portion of the ACA. And there's part of me that goes, maybe we should just say, you know what, the Affordable Care Act, as we know it, is gone. We'll just change the name, slap Trump Care on, slap whatever you want on it, so we can say, you know, they've repealed and replaced it.
Well, I think this puts Democrats and people who want to, you know, protect what we have right now on the defensive. And I really believe that people are not thinking very strategically about this, because this, I agree with you, this is a massive wrench into the health care coverage in the United States. And there's no really a way around that. I know there's a theory out there right now that says that, well, this is going to actually come back and benefit some people on the exchanges because the subsidies will go up and they'll be able to get better health coverage than they did before. That's probably true, but it's also going to create a lot of new losers, and those people are going to be pretty darn angry.
Yeah,
I just don't see it, to be honest.
No,
I
with
really don't see the argument here. I think this is a real problem, and the best thing that could happen is if Democrats went on the offensive at this point, instead of simply defending the status quo.
No, I'm with you. I think, you know, I think what the Sanders people are doing are right. Look, you know, it's you know, any basic negotiation, anyone who's sat down at a negotiating table knows you never start your negotiation at what you're willing to accept.
Right,
and
exactly. And Democrats have been doing that for several decades.
Absolutely.
Now.
And, you know,
which begs the question of why, right? Because presumably they figured out it doesn't work too.
Maybe that's it. Or maybe they're just playing dumb. I don't know. But, you know, at the end of it, you start off going, you know, I want the sun, the world, and the moon, and I'll settle for just the sun.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and that's not what's going on here. But this is a mess. And I think the thing that shows it's a real mess is I was reading, you know, everybody had their take on it this weekend. The Wall Street Journal, Politico, the Washington Post, and so on and so forth, right? Nobody had the same take. Nobody knew if this was going to cause massive damage, little damage, medium damage to the exchanges, which tells you just how much uncertainty is out there. And if there's one thing we know, by the way, health insurers hate uncertainty.
Yep.
They don't price uncertainty. They price risk. And these are two different concepts. And I think people have a hard time grasping that. Risk is how many people are going to sign up and are they going to get sicker than we think. Uncertainty is we're going to change the laws midstream again. And I can see a situation real fast where insurance companies just decide they've had it and they pull out. Keep in mind, they do have to commit in advance, but if they're losing too money, they can pull out at various points.
Right.
I mean, it's not you're committed to them through the year, but they're not necessarily committed to you all the time. There are different ways about them.
But don't you think that's the point? I mean, I remember during the entire Obama term, and maybe you do too, the Republicans screaming that uncertainty word, that, you know, the taxes are going to go up or whatever it is, regulation, all these onerous regulations, you're creating uncertainty, and, businesses, they hate uncertainty. Yet here we have a situation where everything that the Republicans have done for 9 months while they've controlled the levers of power have been about creating uncertainty.
Right. Well, this is about destroying the healthcare exchanges, and that's going to do it if they keep going at it. And, I always felt I'm of the opinion they were always shakier than advertised anyway, so I'm not going to, give them a huge defense, but they were certainly better than what we've had previously. They were certainly a good step forward in terms of working towards universal coverage. And there's certainly no reason to, deliberately jettison them unless you're trying to improve them a la Medicare for All.
Right.
That's not what's going on here. This
Right.
is massive backtracking.
Oh, absolutely. But, here's the thing. And the American people in the latest Kaiser Foundation health tracking poll came out and said, look, 71% of people polled said they want Congress to work to move the ACA forward to make it better. Just 21% just said, do whatever you got to do to destroy it. When you get 71% of the American people to agree on anything in this polar environment that we're in, the polls are pretty clear.
Right, but that's not we think we live in a democracy, which is silly of us sometimes, right? In fact, what gives you power in this country in terms of getting your wishes done by Congress is money, and the big donors are very, very angry about the fact that the Obama Care or the Affordable Care Act exchanges are still in existence, and they've let the Republicans know this.
Yeah.
And this is part of what is going on here. And
why they're angry, by the way, is that they're paying for it.
And they don't like that.
They don't like that. We're because the mastery. Look, I've said this a million times on the show. I'm not a huge fan of the Affordable Care Act. I think it's a major step in the right direction. It was a first step, like Medicare back in the 60s. It was that first step, and over the years, it got better. The mastery of it, though, is that it was completely paid for, and that they did put taxes on the very wealthy who could afford it, and on a whole bunch of other things to make sure that the subsidies and the things were paid for and didn't add to our long-term debt. Yet you've got these people now who are spending a lot of political money and capital saying, we don't want to pay for it anymore. We want our money back, Elaine.
Right. And they're, it seems like on some level, at this point, they're getting their way. I mean, it is to be determined. Congress could come up with a sort of, savior package and get it through.
And
unicorns
I
feel the same way. I mean, these people haven't been able to agree on anything at this point.
And unicorns could come dancing down my street.
I think, I do think that's the issue. But, you had me come on to discuss one small article that I did, and I should talk about this for a few minutes, was totally coincidental because it was for Inc., where I have to write these things a few months in advance, was I wrote about small business and health insurance.
Right.
And one thing that has been somewhat strangely exaggerated in here is the impact of the association plans, right? As we all know, it wasn't on Thursday, it wasn't just that Trump, took away the subsidies to the health insurers. He also gave small businesses the express permission to join together and do get health insurance through associations that would be exempt from the some of the Obamacare requirements.
Right.
In fact, some of this has been going on already. I sort of stumbled into this a few years ago when I was just asking around about health insurance. And it's called professional employer organizations. And they're more or less doing the same thing, though they are offering much, much better health insurance. And I should say what a professional health employer organization is a organization that essentially takes over human resources for a small business.
Right.
And small business can be defined as, 2 or 3 people, or it can be defined as several thousand people in this case. And they basically offer, it's not just health insurance, they offer retirement plans, they offer up, somebody to manage your human resources department for you, and so on and so forth. It's sort of subcontracting the whole thing out. And these organizations have been on a massive growth spurt since the Affordable Care Act went into effect, likely because of the health insurance offerings, which at all points have been significantly better than what's available to small businesses on the exchanges.
Right. And as I was reading through it, I was going, this is actually not a bad idea, in that you allow, and it's one of these things that I think most people think is already in place, that, small business associations are all over the place, and you can pull in with them and then have a group buy, which, I guess is what they're doing. But I think most people think that's how it's always been.
Right, and it isn't. And I mean, there's, different ways, small businesses can get it on their own. They can go through the exchanges. And in this case, these have been, these are plans that are more or less comparable to what's offered by bigger companies. That's actually one of the reasons small businesses do it, because, of course, it's not free, and you have to pay a surcharge to the professional employer organization for this, which can really add up fast, by the way. But for small businesses, this is often a way of being competitive, because when I went out and spoke to a whole bunch, and believe me, they weren't exactly hard to find when I put word out that I was interested in chatting with these people, what I found was that they came to the conclusion they were losing possible employees because they were offering insurance that was not comparable to what a big company would offer. And I should just explain for listeners who don't understand this. Small businesses are generally charged, when they go to get health insurance on their own, a much higher price, and often get less well-designed plans than big employers, because, again, the scale, right? The more people you have in the pool, the more effective it is, the more cost-effective it is, right? And so what I found is that these small businesses were turning to the PEOs in part because they were literally losing potential hires, because somebody would say, I love you dearly, I want to come with you, but I can't pay more for health insurance, or I need access to a PPO and you're only offering an HMO. Whereas when you do it through the PEO, you can, the professional employer organization, you can offer access to several plans.
Right. And for those who don't get the EEIO and all of that stuff, the PPO is is a better health insurance plan than the HMO. And I think anybody who's had to deal with healthcare is tired of both of them.
Right. And this seems to help people, and certainly the small firms I talked to seemed very happy. The only one I spoke to a few who had gone backwards and gone out on their own, and the reason wasn't that they were so unhappy as much as they had grown enough that they felt that they could take it on and get a decent plan on their own again. Because again, it does add up. You are paying per employee, per cycle, and at a certain point, if you grow big enough, you want your own human resources department, and you don't want to do that. And these, as I said, they've been on quite the tear. When I spoke to the PEO industry, they felt health insurance was a huge component of it, though I should say it was not the only component of it, because there were a lot of changes during the Obama administration, some of which are now being reversed by Trump, which I could come back on and discuss another time, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
That, in terms of pay equity and such, that people were just trying to, subcontract some of the stuff out. So there are other reasons than healthcare that these were growing so much, I should say.
But as I was reading through this, and I had this thought a couple of years back, that this for me is one of those areas that unions could also get involved in from the human resources part, because a lot of unions also provide health insurance for members and retirement for members. It just seemed like this could be one of those areas where unions could step in as well and help small businesses by, helping to represent some of their employees and get them health care and access to better benefits as well.
Right, and I believe some are, though I would need to double check that. I mean, the real organizations that are doing this are these professional employer organizations, and TriNet is one of the biggest ones out there that is doing it right now. And one of the ways, by the way, people access TriNet is as if you sign up to work at WeWork. If you form a corporation, you can, you need, if you have a corporate structure, you then sort of get access into the TriNet system.
Interesting. Something well worth taking a look at if you're a small business owner, for certain. Last question I've got for you. In looking at what the executive order that Trump put forth, does this help or hurt this PEO, and does lowering the essential benefits make their plans any better, any cheaper, or do you think it will not affect them?
I think it doesn't affect them because I think the trend has been to use them anyway as the health insurance plans available to small businesses. I think it's sort of one of the underreported stories out there is that, when the exchanges were set up, it was very much promoted as both for individuals and small businesses. Some of the small businesses exchanges some have done quite well. Some have, frankly, had real issues. And I think that this is just going to be an ongoing trend in the market in terms of people turning to these plans because they are, the health insurance market itself is just going to continue to be complex until we settle on some form of long-term solution of the great pool of us all, right? And I think that as long as that situation continues, that's going to help these organizations.
Yeah, I mean, in all of this, some people are going to do better, some people are going to do worse, and you're going to continue to have this bickering back and forth. And my fear is that we end up having these wide swings, these political swings that are going to create that uncertainty, and then ultimately we're all screwed.
I don't want to go quite that far, but I think that this is a real problem. And the last thing I will say is that nobody pays attention to is that this could ultimately cause, real problems in the employer market too, because if less people have insurance, the cost for all of us will go up. Because remember, one of the arguments for the Affordable Care Act in the first place was that we were all paying higher rates because so many people did not have health insurance. We were effectively subsidizing them when they went to the emergency room and couldn't pay their bills, right? You remember that?
No, I do remember because I said it a long time. But there's an executive order probably in the works that will say that no one can go to the emergency room. If you don't have insurance, you just die on the street corner.
It won't be that bad, I don't think.
Okay.
But it will. And I think the part, though, is that this will in turn, one of the things is that the Affordable Care Act did bring some stability in terms of prices to the employer market over the past several years. The chances are that will be a thing of the past if this continues on.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to watch at least. I fear for the worst, but fortunately you have reined me from the edge a bit, and I appreciate that, Helene.
Well, thank you.
Always great talking with you. Look forward to having you back again real soon.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much, Helene Olin. Again, check out her work. It's fantastic stuff. We'll get a link to her latest article on the healthcare woes, a quick guide to PEOs, and maybe it works. Maybe it works. Maybe it does something for you. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Working people come to talk.
And the kids locked in the Capitol are fighting till the end. And we're not gonna break tonight, and we're not gonna bend. Some say the union's down, but I asked around, and everybody said, this is a union town, all down the line. This is a union town, all down the line. And if they come to strip our rights away, we'll give them hell every time. This is a union town, all down the line.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1845. That was the day that the first Industrial Congress of the United States met in New York City. People interested in the problems facing working people, including long hours, low pay, and unsafe working conditions, gathered together. The labor movement was just beginning in this country. These were the years when the early trade unions were formed. Women played an important role in the early labor movement. Female textile mill workers in Lawrence, Massachusetts began to organize for the 10-hour day. In 1844, they established the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association. Their goal was to improve working conditions in the mills. The Lowell Women's Group sent a representative to New York for the Labor Congress. Another important development of the fledgling labor movement was the establishment of labor presses. George Henry Evans, a labor newsman, also attended the Congress. He was the editor of a series of U.S. labor papers, starting with the Workman's Advocate in 1829. He had come to the United States from England, where he had been involved in the trade labor movement. He also attended the Labor Congress. The meeting recommended the formation of 3 organizations. First was an industrial brotherhood for workers, including farmers. The second was an industrial sisterhood for women workers. The third was a group for friends of labor. The Congress met again in New York in 1847, then again met in Chicago in 1850. These early efforts to establish larger labor groups did not gain much traction, but they began to lay the framework for workers to come together to discuss their challenges and imagine how they could work together to bring about change for better wages, shorter hours, and safer working conditions. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. An absolute must-read today. An absolute must-read is the Paul Krugman, Conscious of a Liberal article, Lies, 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 Lies. Yes, that's the headline. He goes through basically what we've been talking about for the last several years here on the program about all of the right-wing lies about the economy. And how, we're the most, the highest tax nation in the world, even though we're somewhere near the middle, the lower middle of the pack. We're not the highest taxed country in the world, even though, again, you've got people screaming, we're higher than everybody. When you got places like Denmark, who's like almost 50% tax rates. Also the estate taxes, killing those farmers. And yet, there are literally, of the 5,200 farms
that are of all of the farmers, I guess like 50 of them, like 1% of the farmers are in a situation where they would have to pay the estate tax. And we haven't found them. We haven't found the small family farmer who's lost the farm, as has always been told. And this has been one of those frames from the mid-'70s forward, that, we're taxing people to death. In fact, when they die, we're taxing their children to death, which is ludicrous. It's not happening. And I guess the small family farmer's driving around with the welfare queen that nobody can seem to find. But it was interesting. If you were in Harrisburg last week, you had Trump running around saying, we're going to get rid of the death tax so that those truckers don't have to pay the estate tax. And I'm going, I got to be honest, I know at least 1,000 truck drivers. And that's not exaggerating. I know at least 1,000. And I don't know one of them that would have to pay the estate tax. Again, maybe if you owned a large fleet of trucks, you could get to that 11 million kind of level, But I don't know any that have a fleet. Now, Paul Krugman says there will probably be 2 truck company owners, maybe next year, who might have to pay it. Maybe. They also talk about the other lie is the pass-through. All these pass-through business, it's going to help small businesses to get rid of this, to do away with this. Which basically is just another way of having rich people who rent out a bunch of things where, they have, a little bit of money come through and it goes through as personal income. So instead of paying the higher corporate tax, they're going to pay the lower personal tax. Most small businesses already pay the lower personal tax rate. So this, again, is another one of those things we know is going to help the very wealthy, not you and me. The other lie that Krugman points out is cutting profit taxes really benefits workers. And I go, how? I'm confused. How? They go into line number 5, the repatriation, because, hey, we're going to bring all that money that's just sitting there waiting for us. And you go, no, there's no one. There's nothing stopping them from bringing that money back except demand. And look, if they really wanted money to build, more jobs and to build up their business, they could borrow it's still almost free. The borrowing, and look, we've already seen this repatriation movie. 2004 when the Congress enacted the Homeland Investment Act. We saw a lot of money came back. Almost very little went to the coffers. Nothing created new jobs. In fact, we lost jobs. CEOs' paychecks got fatter because guess what? They pumped up the price of their stock by buying a bunch of it back, and then they cashed in with stock options, and shareholders made out really well. Workers, not so much. We saw job losses and no new reinvestment. We figured that one out. And yet we've got a president who wants to do it again. The other lie Krugman points out is number 6, that this isn't a tax cut for the rich, and yet you look at they're cutting corporate taxes, they're eliminating the estate tax, there's the pass-through tax that we're going to lower from the corporate tax rate down to the personal rate, and we're going to cut that top marginal tax rate. Who in the 1% could possibly benefit from any of that, other than all of them? They go into, this is a huge tax cut for the middle class. I'm so sick and tired of hearing this is a tax cut for the middle class, because we know that it's not. In fact, what we know is by 2027, the top 1% will see 80% of the tax cuts going to their pockets, while, the middle 3 quintiles, they're going to get about 12%. And you go, I thought the middle class was getting a huge tax cut. No. He goes into lie number 8, which is, hey, we're going to cut all these taxes. We're going to give all this money to the wealthy and some to the middle class. You're going to get a little bit. Don't worry. But it's not going to increase our deficit. We're going to give away all of our money, but we're not going to have deficits. Don't worry about it. Because, hey, there's lie number 9. It's going to jumpstart the economy. It's all going to get back in and the engines are going to be moving. No, those rich people aren't going to hoard it. They're going to spend it. It's going to generate all this great stuff. Which then brings us to number 10. which is that the tax cuts will simply pay for themselves. Because we're going to have all this great activity because rich people are going to have more money and they know what to do with it. And they're going to invest and create high-paying jobs because, hey, there's nobody demanding higher wages. They're just going to bestow it because they're wonderful and they love us and they're benevolent and they're good, decent, honest, hardworking billionaires who just care about the middle class. And you go, why do we keep buying this bull? I mean, at some point, don't we wake up or someone shake us or slap us or kick us or, something to say, stupid. You've been seeing this since the middle 1970s. The entire Reagan era was all about ripping off the working class of this country and handing all of the money to the wealthy. We have created the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization. When you look at the Forbes 400 from its inception to 2011, those 400 slotted people have seen their wealth grow 612%. And yet, a working stiff like me, like you, actually has seen our wages go down. We've gone backwards. And how did that happen? Because we have a wealth class that has seen their wealth grow by 612%. And yet, somehow, we still think, duh, if we keep doing it, it'll work. Holy bleep. So there you go. Check that out. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Frank Emspecht's going to be here to give us his thoughts on what was going on in France. Not going to want to miss that. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show.
10% of the wealth, 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth. Where do you fit in? Take a look at yourself. 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth.
Where smart policy and sound investment matters. The Rick Smith Show.
Betsy DeVos and her hubby Dick are lucky enough to have inherited a big chunk of the multi-billion-dollar fortune that Daddy DeVos amassed through his shady Amway Corporation. But what they've done with their Amway money is certainly not the American way. The DeVos couple are part of the Koch brothers coterie, pushing plutocratic policies that reject our country's one-for-all, all-for-one egalitarianism. In particular, Ms. DeVos has spent years and millions of dollars spreading the right wing's ideological nonsense that our tax dollars should even be given to private schools that exclude people of color and the poor, as well as to profiteering schools known to cheat students and taxpayers. Bizarrely, Donald Trump chose this vehement opponent of public education to head up the agency in charge of, guess what? Public education. Rather than working to help improve our public schools, the Trump-DeVos duo wants to take $20 billion from their federal funding and give it to corporate chains. To see the efficiency of this scheme, look to Arizona, where State Senate President Steve Yarborough pushed privatization into law. One of Arizona's corporatized schools, called Axto, pays its executive director $125,000 a year. His name is Steve Yarborough. Axto also pays millions of dollars to another for-profit corporation named HY Processing to handle administrative chores. The Y in HY stands for Yarborough. And Axto also pays $52,000 a year in rent to its landlord. Yes, Steve Yarborough. This is Jim Hightower saying, as Wall Street banksters, drug company gougers, airline fee fixers, and so many others have taught us over and over, most corporate executives are paid big bucks to take every shortcut, cheat, and do whatever to squeeze out another dime in profits. Why would we entrust our school children to them?
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Caught right there in the... What a weird spot that was, wasn't it? Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. So we look at the email bag. Got a message from James who says, just discovered you. Thanks for all you do. One thing I'd recommend, don't use the word right to work. Not use the language of the right. When we do, we shouldn't call it pro-life. We should use literally the phrase anti-choice. We need a version of that for right to work. That's maybe shorter than right to work. Maybe right to work in poverty should be it. He goes on to say, but it needs to be used regularly and in the segment. Emphasis, not shouting. He's big capital letters. He says, how we name things, support shapes the support, and we need to say consistently, regularly, what things really are and what they are not, and not use the names that the right wing uses. They're his take. Look, James, the reality is, I would love a better frame than right to work. Because, look, I'm actually in favor, and I've gone through this whole spiel. Originally, the whole right to work frame was, a call of labor. We should have a right to a job. We should have the right to employment. And it's been one of those things I've always said that if the private sector will not create enough jobs for we the people, that the public sector has to. That the government should be the employer of last resort. I've always been opposed to handout programs simply because it divides us. There should be, I believe in work. I believe in the dignity of work. I believe that every day you have to get up with a purpose. I am, however, in favor of a guaranteed minimum income as a basis and, allowing people to work and encouraging that. But that's a whole nother down the road. On the, again, I come back to the frame. I'm with you. I wish there was something better than their language. Right to work for less is out there. Right to freeload, that's out there. Right to work in poverty, obviously there. There's all of these frames. The problem with choosing other names is that you confuse people. And the perfect example is the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare. When polled, the right wing, they hate that Obamacare. Hate me some Obamacare. But when you say the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, it's actually received much more positively, and a lot more positively. And you go, but they're the same damn thing. And you go, yeah, they are. But the messaging is, the right always hammers on Obamacare. You never hear them say the Affordable Care Act. It's always repeal and replace Obamacare. So in people's minds, they've been hammered to believe that, that no one's fighting against Obamacare. Because the Democrats keep talking about, how much we got to save the Affordable Care Act. The ACA, save the ACA. As where for years I was saying, I was taking the Obamacare frame and saying, no, we've got to defend Obamacare. And I actually had some liberals who said, you shouldn't be using the language of the right because, that's Obamacare and they bastardized that. And I go, yeah, which is why you have to defend it, because at least people know who you're talking about, know what you're talking about, so that you can't conflate the two. So that's where my thought is. And until there's a singular frame that pushes back against that, you have to use the language. And I hate it. I'm with you. But on some level, you have to fight on the battlefield that you're given. And the right to work frame is, look, I mean, even MLK got it. Martin Luther King Jr. said, back in the 60s, it's a scourge upon, not just the civil rights movement, but the labor movement. It comes with no rights and no work. Duh. And we know that. I mean, even people who are supportive of this legislation, there are a lot of people who actually understand the issue, understand that the goal is not giving you any rights. It's about destroying those damn labor unions and everyone on the right hates. And yet you go back and you look at, these tax schemes that the Republicans keep coming up with, and they keep saying that if we give enough to the businesses and we give enough to big business and in the wealthy, wages are going to go up. And you go, really? When does that happen? When has your boss just walked into your office and said, you know what? I like you. I'm going to give you a raise just because I feel like out of the goodness and the benevolence of my heart. I'm such a good guy. I really care about you and your kids, and we're going to give you better health care. We're going to give you a better pension. We're going to give you extra days off because you need mental health. You know, we're going to let you take some time off when your children are born or your wife gets sick. Don't worry about it. We like you. When has that ever happened? The only advancements that come forward on the job are simple, the ones that you fought for. You know, I go back to an old-time labor guy I knew who was, you know, who fought the fights of the 40s and 50s. And he said, look, he said, you know, the labor movement used to, you know, he was a Teamster representative. He said, look, you know, we used to go on strike at least once every 10 years, at least for a day, at least for one day, even if we didn't have to. And this has been one of those things that the rights, well, see, you can't let them strike because, you know, they'll do it willy-nilly. But the rationale was that the members have to understand that what they get at the bargaining table, what they negotiate for, they won. They fought for. They stood up for. They stood together for. So, you know, when my grandfather went on strike so that he could get better wages, he could work less hours, he could get better health care and better pension contributions, because there was money there available from the work that he did. The companies were wildly profitable. And look, companies have never been more profitable than they are right now. And yet you look at the crappy health care everyone gets. I mean, and this is one of those moments where, for the mass of my working life, I was very fortunate. I had very good union jobs that came with just the most amazing health care. You know, stuff now that we call Cadillac healthcare, which when I first started, it was the healthcare that everybody got. Everyone got, you know, a card, you went to the doctor and bang, everything was taken. It was paid for. There were no deductibles. There were no co-pays. There was, I have my card. I work for insurance. Here's my card. Take care of me. I look at what's gone on, and, you know, people I know who work, and you look at their benefit packages and you go, how is it we've gotten to this place? How is it we've gotten to a place where someone making $50,000 a year is expected to pay upwards of $16,000 a year for health insurance and dental insurance? Explain to me how we got to this point from when I started working, you know, not just 30 years ago, to where all that was included in your pay package. And you made more money back then. How did that happen? Simple. Right to work. Simple. The attack on labor unions. When union density began falling, so did the benefits, so did the wages, so did the conditions on the job. And as it continues to fall next year, because understand, once the Supreme Court dictates from the bench that in the public sector we will be a right-to-work nation, wages, hours, conditions are going to continue to fall and get much worse. And the question that I keep coming back to, and it's one of these things that, you know, and James, you know, maybe you've got a response to this. I keep coming back to, when do we say enough is enough? When do we say stop? During the 20s and 30s, when people were striking, it wasn't legal. These people were doing acts of civil disobedience. When they were sitting down in Ford plants and GM plants, and when they were sitting down in various establishments across the country, striking for better wages, hours, and conditions, it wasn't legal. Police came in with sticks and beat people. Companies hired their own military to terrorize and beat their employees, because they were fighting for something better. I got to be honest, you know, my grandfather passed away in 2000. And, you know, it's one of these times where you go, I wish I could go back and ask him questions. Now, knowing what I know and seeing what we've turned into, about the fights that it took to get that minimum wage, to get those increases, to get it to a point to where when he bought a house in the 1960s, by the time of the middle 1970s, his house payment was a day's work because his union contracts back to that fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, that coming back to, well, us standing together. Because what's interesting to me is I talk to, people who are younger than I am, who are doing some of these jobs. They have no idea what it used to be like. They think this is now normal. We've been trained for a generation now to think that you need skin in the game. You got to co-pay for your insurance. Without thinking that, this used to be a benefit that was part of your compensation package. And what's happened is while the employers still aren't giving you raise increases, they're actually cutting your pay by making you pay into your health insurance. Think about it, $50,000 a year job paying $15,000 to $16,000 for health insurance. That, 20 years ago, you didn't pay. I would argue that that's a major, major pay cut. And again, and I know it sounds like a broken record, but you come back to this. Donald Trump today, the stock market's never been higher. Corporations have never been more profitable. And yet you still have this scenario where people are paying on the job anywhere from, $100 a week to $300 or $400 a week so that they could get health care coverage for their family. It's really quite remarkable how they have trained us to think this is okay. This is just fine. It's how it should be. And by the way, not just the health care, but also the pension component, to where now, when I started working, everyone had a defined benefit pension. Now you get a 401k. And most people don't even get matches anymore. Because I remember when the 401k first came out, they'll be matching up to 6%, which was a great deal. Had a defined benefit pension plan to ensure security, and you had that 401k that if you saved a little bit of money, they'd match a little bit more. It was a good deal. But then they robbed and raided and stole and broke up the defined benefit, and all you're left with was a crappy 401k, which nobody can afford to contribute to. So in every scenario, just in my work life, things have gotten worse. And the generation that's coming up now has no idea what it used to be like and how bad they're getting screwed. Which is why, the hope is that, this generation finally is the one that's smart enough to say, enough is enough. No more. Going to be interesting. And that's why next week, I'm going to get into this in the next segment. Next week, we're heading to St. Louis for the AFL-CIO's convention to talk about a lot of this stuff, because labor is in for a big, big change coming up real soon. We'll take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around.
We gotta take the bastards down.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1899. That was the day union miners in Mount Olive, Illinois, began commemorating Miners' Day. Every year, thousands came into town for a parade, music, and speeches. Mount Olive was the site of the only union-owned cemetery in the United States, established by UMWA Local 728 in the aftermath of the Verdun Massacre. A year before to the day, striking miners had been killed in a shootout with company goons attempting to herd scabs into the mines in Verdun, Illinois. But, as Mother Jones biographer Elliot Gorn notes, the train never unloaded its cargo, and the company was forced to settle. The Union hoped to erect a gravesite monument commemorating those miners who had been killed at Verdun, but they were refused by those who considered the fallen miners to be murderers and not martyrs. That's when the United Mine Workers established the Union Miners Cemetery, and on this day, 10,000 turned out for the Union's memorial ceremony. The United Mine Workers unveiled a monument dedicated to the fallen Verdun miners E.W. Smith, Joe Gitterly, Ernest Kramer, and E.F. Long. The day was filled with parades, music, laying of wreaths, and speeches. Haymarket widow and radical activist Lucy Parsons was among the speakers. In his book, Death and Dying in the Working Class, Michael Rossnow notes that her presence drew a direct connection between the fallen miners and the Haymarket martyrs, cut down while advancing the cause of labor. Thousands traveled to Mount Olive every year for celebrations, including Eugene V. Debs, miners leader John Mitchell, and Mother Jones. In 1923, Mother Jones asked to be buried with her boys, noting they are responsible for Illinois being the best organized labor state in America.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
Here's an interesting little tidbit. According to Axios, the Trump campaign has spent $1.1 million in the first 3 months of the year, according to their FEC filings, on legal fees alone. In fact, $830 went to Jones Day. They're the law firm that's representing the Trump administration with all of the Russia investigations. Also, he spent $238,000 that went to the Trump's personal lawyer, Alan Futterfast. So there you go. Look, at the end of it, lots of money going to be spent on lawyers because of this administration. In fact, if you remember, they wanted to allow donations to go to staffers from wealthy donors to cover their legal fees that we know are coming. So lots of fun, lots of enjoyment on the legal front. And again, I'm still waiting for all of the Mueller shoes to drop as, look, the guy's doing his work. He's doing the due diligence, and it's going to be interesting to see what he finally comes out with. And you remember Carter Page? Just to kind of throw it out there, Carter Page was one of the guys who early on was, taking on, we're gonna go get him. I'm gonna defend myself at every turn. Turns out, well, he's not. He's going to, if called, he will continually plead the fifth, but, not going to testify. So much for, I'm going to vehemently go and take them on and kick their, all of that. So, yay. I think they're all realizing that this is serious, and that, looking back at Trump going, is this guy going to be around to pardon us? I don't know. Going to be very interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So we got some news, and I've been meaning to jump into this for some time. We are expanding our program with our partnership with Free Speech TV, of which we do a weekly TV program. We are working towards the daily format. We've gotten such really great response from our viewers of the weekly program that we're moving towards the daily. We are moving our time slot from our current 10 a.m. to noon live time back to our original 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. time slot. Not going to affect any of our podcasters, so folks who listen to the program via podcast, still going to be there, still going to be available anytime you want / need. That's not going to be a problem. It should be a little bit later getting delivery. But for our live listeners, we're moving to 9 p.m. To 11 p.m., which all of it will be live via Twitter, via our website, via the various stations. Will continue to air as they're airing it now. We're just going to be in a little bit different time for our live content. And this is going to really help expand our reach as we move towards the television world, which has just been really a terrific experience, and it's going to I think it's going to help us grow a lot faster and a lot bigger, and give us a little bit more ability to bring you better content and the same outstanding folks that we continue to get on the program, and also give them a larger microphone to be able to look. There's a lot of problems. There are a lot of things going on. be it from health care to our insane tax code and only going to get worse, to, a crazy guy in the White House with his finger near the buttons, pointing at Iran and North Korea. There's just so much to this. And now more than ever, the conversations need to be had. Now more than ever, we need to stand up and continually to say daily, this is not normal. I mean, it's almost been one of those, Pledge of Allegiance kind of things. I wake up every day and I look at the news and I go, this isn't normal. I cannot get up and go, this is the normal. This is the world I live in. We have to push back against that. And that's one of the things I think this program does, and the interactions I have with folks brings, not just to my life, but I think a lot of other folks, and they reinforce that by saying, hey, thanks for being here. I get emails from people going, you know what, I start my day, with a bit of sanity. I start my day with going, not everybody has lost their ever-loving freaking minds. Even if what we're seeing coming out of Washington and state houses makes us think we are. And look, every one of these battles, we are in this together. Every one of these fights, we have to stand together. Every move forward, we, united together, in solidarity, have to push forward on. Celebrate our victories, yes, but get right back to the fight. Because understand, and you look at what the right wing has accomplished and what they've done masterfully. They've created their little echo chamber. It's heavily funded, and they've got all their little minions out there doing their bidding, from Steve Bannon all the way down. Sane, rational people have to have the same kind of environment. We need to be creating these platforms. We need to be creating these opportunities for the sane and rational among us to come together and, strategize, fight, and win. So next week we're going to be in St. Louis for the American Federation of Labor Congress of Industrial Organizations, AFL-CIO convention from St. Louis. And look, front and center is going to be, what's the future of the labor movement? So all week we will be doing our Twitter casts and via YouTube. We will be putting podcasts together. Our live radio shows will stop. We're going to be replaying for terrestrial radio our civil rights tour so that folks get content every day. We will be back November 6th as our live time slot moves to the 9 to 11 time slot. So just to kind of get that all in your head. This week we're gonna be doing live shows in our current time slot. The next week we're in St. Louis for the big convention. The week after is a complete revamp of what we do and all of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your ideas. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email Rick at thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.